Hello, girls. I'm Brandon Morrison, and along with Miss Parker and today's speaker, Cissy Bruce, I was a member of the class of 1983. We graduated from St. Mary's 35 years ago, just celebrated our 35th reunion. Many things have changed since we graduated, but a few are the same, like coming back here, home to chapel. Cissy is still most likely the smartest in the room. In many classes, perhaps, the valedictorian is not known to the very last minute. Not so in our class. We always knew Cissy would be the valedictorian. Yet, despite her academic ability, Cissy was and is a friend with whom you had a lot of fun. Celebrate Good Times was the theme song of the class of 1983. We always knew Cissy, we continue to do that often, and you can always pick right back up with Cissy. After graduating from UVA and Vanderbilt Law School, she first served as law clerk to the Honorable Sam Pointer of Alabama, and then practiced law representing corporate clients. While raising her children, she was especially active civically in Birmingham. In 2014, Cissy returned to the practice of law, and this time as a sole practitioner. Later, she joined a team of attorneys representing pro bono death row inmate Donis Musgrove. She also began assisting Doug Jones with white-collar criminal matters in 2015. After Jones won the Alabama Senate election late last year, she moved to Washington, D.C. to serve as counsel for Senator Jones. Cissy's St. Mary's senior quote reads, "Success is measured by whom you love and who loves you." Cissy is well loved by her wonderful parents, Wallace and Olivia, her husband, Steve, who is an attorney in Washington, and her two children, Sarah Francis and Will, who attend the University of Georgia, as well as by many friends like me and others on the front two rows. While at St. Mary's, I have a couple of specific memories with Cissy. Both were at her house. One is of enjoying the best waffles I had ever had. Her mom made them with peanut butter and syrup for breakfast. She needed energy as she was a serious swimmer. The second was also in middle school as we prepared for our science school project. And we were doing a project on the sense of smell in the nose. And we were quite competitive and both wanted to do the handwriting on the poster. And her adorable sister, Libby, chose my handwriting. I was thrilled, and we got second place. St. Mary's prophetic, most likely, may well be in the process of being fulfilled. Cissy was selected by our class as most likely to become a Supreme Court justice. Please join me in welcoming my dear friend and today's speaker, Cissy Bruce.
Thank you, Brandon. That was more than generous. Good morning, turkeys and turkey alumni and Mom and Daddy, and Ms. Fisher. Thank you all for coming. Raise your hands if you were on the St. Mary's D.C. trip a few weeks ago and bumped into me and my husband on the National Mall. Hi! It's good to see you again, and it's really good to be back at St. Mary's. Thank you for inviting me. As Brandon told you, I moved to Washington on New Year's Day to serve as general counsel to Doug Jones, the senator who won a special election last December. Everybody wants to know how in the world I, of all people, wound up advising a senator when I have never worked in policy or politics in my life. And the short answer is I was following some really good parenting advice. About 20 years ago, when our son was entering what a lot of people call the terrible twos, a friend of mine who was very wise and had children a little bit older gave me some really simple advice. She said, say yes as often as possible. Now, I'm 100% certain that if you asked my children right now, they would tell you that I didn't follow that advice to their complete satisfaction, but I tried. And I think it's such good advice that I try to follow it in other areas of my life when I'm presented with challenges and opportunities. So at about 1:30 in the morning on December 13th, when the election celebration was winding down, and my good friend, the newly elected senator, asked me if I would go work with him in Washington, I said yes. 3 weeks later, a light snow was falling as I drove across Memorial Bridge into Washington with my sweet yellow lab in the back seat and my sweeter husband driving a 15-foot U-Haul truck behind us. And I caught sight of the Capitol, and I burst into tears. I was terrified all of a sudden. I thought, I don't even know what a counsel to a senator is. I'm completely unprepared. I really didn't think I would last a month. But as it turns out, I was prepared, and when I thought back on it, I realized that preparation started right here at St. Mary's. There are 3 things in particular that I learned here that have been helpful to me in my life and especially in my work on the Hill. The first thing is that St. Mary's teachers, and thank you, Miss Matheny and several others, taught me how to read and think critically. The papers we wrote and the discussions that we had in our classes established a really strong foundation that my professors at UVA and at Vanderbilt could build on. And now more than ever, it is absolutely essential to think critically about the information that you receive and the information that you believe. When I was your age, there were 4 channels on TV, and television programming went off at midnight. Today, we receive information 24 hours a day from an astonishing number and variety of sources, whether we want to or not. But what we believe is a choice. And of course, you can choose to believe whatever you like, but you should make that choice based on the best, most reliable information that you can find. So look critically at your sources. Think about their reliability, their motives, their access to the facts, their transparency. Also, and I really can't emphasize this enough, you must always try to consider the views from the other side. The first book I read after moving to Washington was one that my father had given me, Bill Haltom's biography of the great Tennessee Senator Howard Baker. And the book explains that the secret to Senator Baker's success in Congress was advice that his father, Howard Baker Sr., had given him when he was a young lawyer. And he said, "You should go through life working on the assumption that the other fellow just may be right." I take meetings every day with people who passionately believe that the senator should vote this way on a certain issue or should oppose this bill. And I always ask them this question: who opposes this and why? If they can't answer that question, they haven't done their homework. If they can't or won't tell me, I'll do the research. And I'll usually find things because there's almost always at least one other view of any particular situation. When I was working as a trial lawyer, it was really important for me to be able to see both sides of the case and find the strengths and the weaknesses in each one. And as a Senate staffer, I do the same thing when preparing to advise the senator. Only after looking at all aspects of an issue am I prepared to recommend a particular course of action to him. The second essential skill I began developing at St. Mary's was articulating my opinions clearly and confidently. Thanks to Miss O and Miss Gill and pretty much everybody in between, they taught me how to construct a sentence properly and how to build a solid argument or justify a conclusion. I think also that being in an all-girls school helped, because this environment allowed me to hone those skills with confidence and with fewer inhibitions. In addition to giving me the tools to present my opinions, St. Mary's education helped me identify the values that would inform those opinions. Very few of the people I met at UVA or at Vanderbilt had the breadth of exposure to literature, history, and culture that St. Mary's had given me. And even fewer people had the benefit of the 12-year curriculum that emphasized developing the whole person. You all know what I'm talking about. When I went to St. Mary's, we had foreign language every year, starting in first grade. On top of the regular curriculum, we took both gym and ballet in lower school, so we'd be fit and graceful. We all had to take 2 years of Latin so we'd understand English. We had manners classes, religion classes, values classes, and then we had ballet again in 11th grade to really cement the poise and posture. Senator Jones is in a difficult place a lot of the time with a constituency that can seem very, very divided. In that kind of atmosphere, knowing your values and being able to explain with confidence the reason for your decisions is crucial. The final thing is that St. Mary's taught me the importance of serving others. By doing volunteer work with organizations like the Beta Club and class projects beyond number, I was regularly reminded that I was not, after all, the center of the universe. I once heard Cokie Roberts, the NPR reporter and author, describe a speech she gave at a literacy fundraiser as enlightened self-interest, and I love that phrase. It's a more elegant way of saying that she was helping herself by helping others. Yes, that night, she would sell a lot of books, and by helping support funds for adult literacy programs, she might likely sell more books in the future. But that was not her point. Her point was that she understood the intangible benefits of doing something for somebody who needs help. And I know that working with Senator Jones, serving the people of Alabama is a great privilege. And it's one of the most important jobs I will do. As is true for all kinds of service, I will undoubtedly gain more than I ever give, no matter how many long nights or weekends I work. So now we arrive at the long answer to the question, how in the world did Cissy Jackson wind up on Capitol Hill? I apologize. I met Doug Jones about 15 years ago doing volunteer work. We became great friends and we started practicing law together. And the rest is, or I hope it will be, history. Thank you.